Hi guys, I'm Daniel Bell here with my friends Vina Lustado and Andrew Morrison at Octavio's Italian Restaurant in Camarillo, California.
And we're here to talk today with the Ventura chapter of the International Code Council, the ICC, about tiny houses. This is, to give you an idea, this is our tiny house. And when people think about tiny houses, they don't always think about it as being like this. They have a different vision of it, but they are fully self-contained. They handle waste management the same way that you would in any other house. There are options of people doing compostable toilets, or not, the toilets aren't compostable, but the material in them, composting toilets. But that's obviously handled in code and also in the zoning as to what's allowed. Where we live, for example, we are allowed a composting toilet as long as we have a septic system as well. So we have both. Climate control, we've got same HVAC. Mostly in our climate, it's heating that we're worried about, so we have that available to us. Electrical and plumbing are handled in the same way. The main difference in the electrical is that a tiny house is pretty much typically considered a sub-panel as opposed to a main panel. So obviously the different separation of the buses there has to be managed. So quickly, who's living in these tiny houses, just so you get an idea. It's not just crazy people, which is what some people think. There's college students, first-time home buyers. That's my wife and I, so couples, families living in tiny houses as well. Retirees is our friend Vera, who's 66, built her own house by herself. And caretakers and disabled homeowners. Typically disabled homeowners are not dealing with lofts, they're dealing with houses on a single story, but it gives them a little more flexibility to be able to move as necessary in their lives as their impact of their disabilities comes to play. So the current construction standards right now, there's two basic separate courses that are used right now. There's the professionally manufactured homes that are done in facilities, so RVIA certified facilities using the ANSI code, either 1192 or 1195. The problem with that is that it gives you, if you get the approvals at the end, you end up with an RV, which doesn't give you any permanent living status. So that's a problem for most people who are looking to live in it. There are those who want to travel with their RVs, RV homes, tiny home RVs, people are calling them, and that's fine. They can get the certification through RVIA. They can build their house, they can move, as long as they're moving, it depends on the zoning, but typically 30 days they can stay in one place and then have to move on from there, and that's fine if that's their lifestyle. Folks who are looking to build a house and actually have a house at the end, RVIA is not really an option. Although at this point people are going that route so they know they have some type of certified home, but then they're ultimately ending up in an illegal house at the end, even though it's built safely. So owner builders, it's typically a mixed code interpretation. So folks who are looking at that look at the IRC and say, well, how much of this can I meet? Well, I'll meet that much. And then the parts that I can't meet, I'll meet RVIA, and the parts that I can't, or ANSI, and the parts that I can't meet of that, well, I'll just flub it and call it good. And that's the real risk right now. The sole sort of oversight is engineering, so going in and having your design engineered to make sure you've got health and safety standards met. But the big concern for some of us, certainly for me as a code advocate, is that we don't have the oversight on these owner builders. I've seen a lot of crazy things over the years, and not too long ago I was in Seattle and there was a woman who wanted to build her own tiny house by taking apart pallets and then reassembling them as the studs. So obviously we know that's a bad idea, but the fact that people don't know that's a bad idea is a real problem. So I'd like to see some type of oversight that allows people to build safe homes. Right now, our foundation system is a trailer, which is obviously a big hindrance in the IRC. The trailers are designed to carry specific loads. They're typically engineered through the manufacturer of that trailer and registered through RVIA or the DMV. We want to make sure that we're anchoring a home properly. This is from a set of plans for our house. We're using the HTT4s and anchor bolts welded to the chassis, which gives us a solid anchor point, making sure our connections are solid. And then attaching the trailer to the ground. Imagine this presentation bigger so you could actually see what that picture is. It would make it easier for you to understand. That's basically a trailer with several anchor points. So we've got basically jack stands with concrete underneath them, and then strapping, which is holding it down. So you've got the uplift also met in that situation. Obviously right now there's a lot of changes in housing, or the needs for housing. There's been tons and tons of foreclosures, as we know, the nation over. And a lack of affordable housing for owners. That gap is getting bigger and bigger, where people can't really financially handle buying into a house. I don't know what the prices are like down here, but I imagine it's worse than it is in Oregon. Yeah, it's pretty bad. We just looked at a house in Oregon that was a 2-bedroom, they're tiny little bedrooms, totally falling apart, absolutely a horrible house. $225,000. There's no way for someone who's looking to buy their first home, there's no way into the market anymore for a lot of these people. And then rents are skyrocketing as well. I was talking with a waitress in San Mateo the other day, and she said that her rent had just been raised 23% from 1 month to the next. So basically half of the people in her building are being ejected from the building because they simply can't afford it. And it's all being done legally. It's all within code. There's no rent control there. So that's the challenge that they're up against. And one of the things that's often overlooked is the loss of pride of ownership. So in communities, I know that, as building officials, we're trying to keep the quality of housing up and the quality of the communities up as a result. And when you start losing people out of a community who've been there for a while and they don't own their houses anymore and they're being pushed out and other people are coming in and it's a quick rent and then they leave because they can't afford it, the pride of ownership really has an impact on the overall community because that's lost. So a potential solution, tiny houses on wheels. Yes, this is a joke. This is not what your tiny house on wheels is going to look like. But it's often the concern that people have is it's going to be, we don't want to go back to shanty towns. We don't want to go back to these little shacks that are 55 people living in there with no windows. That's obviously not what we're talking about. So this is our tiny house again. I kind of just self-promoted all the way through this thing by putting my house in it over and over again. But this is an image of our house. Our house is 207 square feet. So lots of room for everything we need. And it makes a beautiful addition to neighborhoods. We've got cedar siding. It's quite a beautiful door. And I just learned the other day, this is by chance, but in some cultures a red door means your mortgage is paid off. I didn't know that, but that's true for us too. So this is a mortgage-free house, and I guess we painted the door the right color. Yeah, that's in Oregon. Thus the snow.
There you go. What's that again?
What's that again? It's like sand, but colder. Yeah.
The stairway there doesn't have any railing or...
The funniest thing about this was when I put this picture on, Gabriella, my wife, said, the first thing they're going to say is there's no railing on that stairway. And I said, it's not like I'm presenting to code people. They won't even notice. No, you're absolutely right. There is no railing on this. Subsequently, it has been installed.
As you said earlier, your house was constructed to the minimum size that Oregon would allow.
Correct.
For a dwelling unit.
Right. No
smaller than 207 in order to accommodate all of the facilities necessary.
Well, that's what we've tried so far. We don't know if we could go smaller, but 207 was no problem whatsoever.
You submitted it and they approved it.
They approved it straight off the bat. Now, there are changes to this design. So this is the design so we sell these plans so you can build it in other places as well. So like this, the plans do actually have a railing on, but this one didn't have it on. In order to meet the IRC, some things had to change in this design, so what you're seeing here will be different than what the IRC approved. So those changes I'll show you in a little bit when we get into the barriers.
Like a Winchester stairway.
What's that?
Looked like a Winchester stairway there.
I don't even know what that is, but I think it's a joke. I think you're making fun of me in some capacity. Oh yeah, the headroom is that, and that's on my list. So health and safety standards, obviously, we're trying to meet that and making sure that we're creating homes that are safe for people to live in and healthy at the same time. And most people, when they think of tiny houses, don't think of a full-size kitchen, but we even had room for a wine rack in ours. Although we've since taken it out because we realized when we have wine, we just end up with empty bottles in the wine rack, so there's not really any point of that. So we've taken that out. They are affordable. To give you an idea on this house, like we say, we've got full-size kitchen, 3/4 bath, so we have a shower but no tub. Everything that we need. This house costs $33,000 from start to finish. So affordable really is affordable. And again, pride of ownership, when you have people who are living in houses that are beautiful and they're happy with them, and especially if they had something to do with the actual construction of the house, there's a huge pride of ownership that comes with that. So here's the exciting part, the barriers to IRC compliance. And I don't think I need to in my notes here, I've got all the information about what R304, which sections and what are the impacts and all that. I think you guys probably know these codes pretty well. So basically the minimum room areas in the 2015 IRC, they've changed that now from the 120 square foot minimum down to the 70. I don't know if you know about that change that's coming out.
So you mean your minimum room area is 70, is other habitable rooms currently have to be 70.
Correct.
And you have a primary area of 120.
Of 120.
The 120 is
that 120 is scratched in the 2015.
Will be 70 plus other habitable being
70 plus other habitable being 70 as well, and that 70 basically everything that can contain for habitable rooms. It's not including bathrooms, so bathrooms have to be separated obviously, and so that'll be in addition. So you couldn't, that guy who had that 30 square foot house, not an option no matter what. With 30 square foot house is basically a box. I don't know if you've seen those. They sell them at shoe stores. But the 70 square foot, that does not include the bathroom, so that would be in addition to, and you still have to meet the requirements of 15 inches either side, you know, the center lines and all that.
Any idea what the state is going to do with their efficiency dwelling unit?
I don't, not at this point. I'm not sure how they're going to interpret that. Foundations, obviously the main issue with foundations is that a tiny house on wheels is, well, it's on wheels, so that's the biggest challenge. And one of the challenges that we met when we brought our plans in for approval, the first thing they said, take the tires off. It's got to be set on a foundation. So this is one of those places where, you know, all of these are ideas that right now they're a barrier to IRC compliance, and we're trying to get it so we can move a tiny house on wheels through IRC and get a certificate of occupancy at the end. So, you know, ideas in terms of foundations is when we have an engineered foundation, can we meet the intent of the code with that by having the jack stands on top of concrete pads, or a full concrete pad with anchor points that's doing hold downs and restraints as well.
So is that what you're doing?
Yes. Yeah, that's on our engineer plans. That picture that you saw before has, I think there's the jack stand at the front, and then there's, I believe, 5 jack stands down each side of the frame, all the way down, and there's strapping that comes down and attached to anchors in the slab itself.
I'm trying to understand what you're trying to do different than a single wide double mobile.
It's not that different. The big difference would be to be able to leave the wheels on to one extent, and there's a reason behind that, which I'll get to in here eventually. The main difference is that single wides and double wides in manufactured housing, all of that is certified in the manufacturing facility, so the facility is what's certified. We don't have that luxury as an owner builder, so within the IRC code we can do site-built homes that are inspected through the process of construction. So that's the big thing that we're looking for, is how do we get a homeowner who has the idea to build this house, set it from the ground up and build it on site and have it be legally given a certificate of occupancy. The other option we have with the RVIA,
Transportable.
yes,
That's where you're headed.
and that is where the IRC would step away and would not be responsible anymore, because obviously there's no one who's going to ask. Well, some people will ask for anything, but I'm not asking the IRC to manage mobile units. That's just not an option. So basically, if it were to move, there'd have to be a joint situation where the certificate of occupancy would be removed in that moment. It would then be certified as an RVIA or a DMV load and taken to where it's going to go, and then it would be recertified once it's placed back on a foundation.
It allows you to move a home now. You can move a 3,000 square foot home if you want. And
That's true.
The Health and Safety Code recognizes that buildings moved from one jurisdiction to another shall not be required to comply with the current requirements as though they were a new building, that they can keep certain provisions.
Yeah.
But I don't have to get into particulars of it, each one. But you can do that. I don't know why a tiny home couldn't do the same thing, where you basically lose your CFO in the site you're at and then the site you're going to.
Well, other than you solving all of our problems, which I'm happy to say you just did, that works really well for me. I think the one difference, if I could throw a wrench in my own story here, would be that in that move, if you're taking a house and you're relocating the house, I agree with you that can be done and within code. The problem with some folks who are doing the tiny houses is their desire is to take this house and move it from Kansas to California, but then stop at South Dakota on the way and live in it for a little bit there and live in it. So it becomes a mobile RV at that point. Yeah, so those people can go through the RVIA, but if they want to do both, that's where, in my opinion, you got to negate. You can't have both. You can have one or the other. I don't think you can have both, as I see it right now. And I don't see how we can ask the IRC to step up and manage something that's not within their jurisdiction, because it's not fair to you guys. You got enough on your plate already. I don't want to hurt you. 119.2, yeah.
To adopt the IRC standards in terms of construction.
Right, and
that's potential.
Yeah, exactly. Did you have a question, Mike?
Yeah, I agree with the affordable housing, but how are you addressing like code enforcement, zoning, local zoning ordinances? That's where you're going to get.
And absolutely, and those are two. I mean, they're two entirely different topics to the sense of like how we build it is what I'm talking to you guys about. Zoning that's a whole other challenge, and that's local ordinances. That's harder to deal with the top down. We're talking about each individual county, city, even down to the plat. You can have plat requirements that restrict certain sizes of housing. So there's a lot of there's a lot of
see
question
what's
in there.
happening in the-
Another, I jumped for two there. Stair requirements and heights. You already, what did you call them? Winchester stairs?
Well, it's stairway that goes nowhere. Yeah.
Stairway, okay, yeah, good.
Manchester Mystery House.
Oh yeah, okay, now I get it.
To the ceiling.
Yep, I got it. So that's one of the big challenges. So stair requirements. There's several issues on stairs. There's the head height, the 6'8" from the diagonal line from the nosings. So that becomes a challenge. It's fine for the first few steps, and then you run out of room. And the reason that we run out of room is that a tiny house on wheels is restricted to 13'6" to make it down the road. So unless you have, and there are actually a couple examples of houses that jack up when you get there and the roof extends up. So now you can actually stand up there. So they're few and far between, but they do exist. So that's a challenge. Tread heights riser heights and treads, depth are also a challenge. Width of stairwell is a challenge. And so all of these requirements that are in the IRC make it harder for you to use stairs within a tiny house. Now one of the things, I'm going to get to this later. I was jumping ahead on my own. Sleeping loft, I just wrote several barriers because it's the same thing. Head heights are an issue, egress is an issue. There's lots of different challenges to having a sleeping loft. And stairs are an issue on that too.
Doesn't the IRC have a provision for habitable attics?
Yeah, I think the difference being that a habitable attic, anything below 5 feet is not counted as floor space, and so you're still dealing with anything below 5 feet means in a tiny house on wheels the whole thing doesn't exist. Because we're looking at, on a high side, we're looking at about 4 foot something. You're not getting much in there. Although I don't think I have a picture of my tiny house loft, but it's incredibly comfortable. But it's definitely a loft. There's no question. So there's barriers there, and like we said, the egress requirements, challenges around that too, and recognizing one potential in egress for tiny houses, if we can get around all the other challenges of the sleeping lofts. The big thing is getting an egress window into a small space like that. A potential solution to that could be a skylight, whereas in a regular house, a skylight, there's no way you can be within 44 inches of the floor, but in a tiny house, you're very much within 44 inches of the floor. So some of these things can potentially be worked through, but they're definitely challenges for us. And the energy code, so one thing about tiny houses is we know they're super energy efficient. I mean, they're small, right? So if we're dealing with the full energy wrap, and I've been a natural builder for 20 years, so I'm all about energy and conserving and all of that. But I think we have to look at in some of the aspects with the code. Recently, when I went through the legalization of our house, we met all the insulation envelope requirements, we met the glazing requirements, we had all of that, and they said, okay, now what additional piece are you going to use from, I can't remember the table number, but are you going to have solar systems? Are you going to have instantaneous hot water heater? And luckily we had all those things, so it wasn't a problem. But to me, when you're asking someone to meet standards and then give that extra bonus to make it even more energy efficient when it's basically like heating someone's closet, it seems potentially a little bit excessive. And again, I'm all about keeping it environmentally sound. So I put many tiny housers, and housers has become a new name now. It's a new word. It's not in the dictionary yet, but we're working towards that. Many tiny housers want homes and not RVs. It's not everyone. There are some people out there who are not that interested in they want to be able to drive their RV around and live in it, and just don't want to live in an RV. They want to live in a house. But many of us do want to get certificate of occupancies in an actual home, and we recognize that in that process that health and safety matters. That's like there's a purpose for this, right? It's codes aren't just like so you guys can have a job and annoy people. That's not what this is about. And I know you guys get the bad rap, so that's why I put it out that way. So really from both sides of this, I think we want code compliance. The idea that people are building these houses now and they're not under code compliance, it worries me. I was saying to Daniel when he picked me up last night at the airport that in my opinion, we're one major disaster away from the whole tiny house industry being shut down. We have one house that's built out of these pallets that are nailed together and it just flies apart on the highway and kills a family of 5 that's driving behind them. It's all over. So to me, it's about getting code compliance and making things safe. And then going back to that whole thing about it being a closet, it's about recognizing that tiny houses are actually tiny. And so what's the intent of the code? Can we work within the intent of the code, again, with foundations, if it says it's about anchoring and it's about providing solid load paths and all of that? Is there a way that we can work within that intent and create new options within the code that will help us to meet that code so that we can bring people into the fold? And then one of the examples was around ladders. So with our house, the stairs, even with the railing, which I was surprised you noticed that, but even with the railing, we were told that the stairs were not, those weren't safe, that we had to remove those. Even to access just a storage loft, that we couldn't have those stairs because they didn't meet the head height requirements, they didn't meet the tread and riser requirements. But it was 100% okay to have a removable ladder to meet that, to reach that same space. So to me, that's crazy. Like, how is a removable ladder safer than a staircase with a railing that, even though it's narrower and so forth?
Well, but the user using a stairway has certain expectations of every other stairway they use, that they're going to be able to go up it and go down it normally.
Yeah.
I know for me, I start climbing a set of stairs and I've hit my head before.
Yeah.
And in terms of why you have to dig down, it makes sense. People have an expectation of how a stair is going to perform. We deal with stairs every day.
Yeah.
You go up and down a set of stairs, we all know how they're going to perform. You happen to go into this little tiny house and you jam up the stairs expecting that it's going to be the same. And it's not. But a ladder, we all know you have to take caution going up a ladder.
Right.
So to me, it makes sense in terms of how people use these on a daily basis.
And is that,
You'd have to take
They wouldn't allow you to have a fixed ladder though?
Well,
no, it had to be a removable ladder.
you can use those
Yeah.
alternating tread ladders, though.
You know, lay it
That's
down.
in the code, the alternating.
The alternating tread ladder?
Yeah, which almost like a ladder.
Yeah, yeah. Yeah, that's good to know.
Yeah,
Yeah,
like ship ladders.
yeah. Yeah, so that's good to know. I didn't know that was an option. And then just, Jim, back to your question, your point about having understanding. Are you talking about, so when, for example, firefighters are coming in and they see a set of stairs, they're going to run up the stairs thinking it's normal, or the homeowner itself?
One of the reasons that the code has such restrictions on the difference between the rise and run and a flight of stairs being no more than 3/8 of an inch.
Right.
Is people get to using a set of stairs and they're scooting down those stairs. They have a rhythm and an expectation of what they're going to find on each step.
Sure.
You get down there, you get 7 steps down and you move and all of a sudden it's 2 more inches.
Right.
What happens?
Right.
Right? Off
Right.
you go.
Right.
So it's kind of the same thing. I mean, we have certain expectations as occupants of buildings as how things are going to be.
Yeah.
And so I think that's why, you see a set of stairs, you expect a certain stairs to perform a certain way.
Right. Yeah, I can understand.
That's
And
not the intent behind it.
yeah, no, I get that. And for me, I can say, having lived on these stairs for a while now, like, we're used to that stairs. And I would see that someone coming in, if someone were to come in an egress situation and we're unconscious and they're dragging us out, that could be a problem for them. But for the average homeowner, well, I would say the average tiny house homeowner is anything but average. We're not, it takes a certain person to live there. So I think those of us living in those spaces can quickly adjust to the different sizes and different heads. But I understand the intent of what you're saying there. It does make sense to me. And then exceptions, as we know, there's lots of exceptions within the codes, which you talked about earlier at lunch today, that you've got the base code and you can make an exception that makes it more stringent. It's typically not going the other way around. But looking at options, just trying to find out different ways. And again, ANSI standards versus IRC standards, as you pointed out, ANSI is an easier code to meet. The standards are less. And then I come back to the same question using stairs. For example, here we've got stairwell should not be, well, I don't have to read the whole thing, but basically the point of this is you could get down to a 20-inch wide stairwell, and they can be steeper and the treads can be shallower. So if that's okay for a house where you're allowed to live recreationally for 30 days, I wonder what happens on the 31st day that suddenly now it's dangerous. So somehow either ANSI needs to bring their standards up, or there could be room in the IRC for some type of exception or some type of understanding that those codes could still be considered safe in a permanent house if it's a tiny house. So just pointing out the obvious, I guess. Okay, so this is where we already kind of jumped onto this, the concept of that you'd have to change it for new locations. The point that I want to make at the end here is that most of the people that I talk to, I teach workshops all over the place, and most of the people that I talk to, they're looking at one of two reasons as to why they want to move their tiny home. One is because that's what they saw on TV and they're like, oh, I thought it was supposed to be. That's what a tiny house is. It's supposed to be on wheels. And they don't have any other reason than that. And as soon as they say, well, why don't you just build it on a foundation? They go, oh, I can do that and still be considered tiny. So that takes away some people right there. The other side of people, the majority of them are looking to move their house maybe 1 to 3 times. They're people who they have land right now, but they know they're going to be moving, but they don't want to rent anymore. They want to build something and then take it with them. Or they're people who are professionals and let's say they're working in the Silicon Valley, and then their job takes them to Houston. They can actually take their house with them. They don't have to they don't have to sell everything they own and get rid of everything and then build a new house in their new location. They can take their home with them. And this is the same with people who are retiring at that age where they're in their home and suddenly now they have to go to assisted living and they have to leave everything that they know, everything that's familiar is left behind, and they go somewhere different. My dad's going through this right now. My mom just died. he's now in this house that's too big for him. He's moving somewhere else. Everything that he knows is gone, and he's moving into a different place. And that can be very traumatic. So again, there are those who want to take their house and move and use it all the time. That's fine. They can do that, and the RVIA provides for that. For those who want a home, it gives us an advantage of being able to take our home with us when we go.
So the real driving force then behind that, based on what you were just saying, Andrew, is that they don't want to buy an RV. They'd much rather be able to build it themselves.
Yeah.
And take it and not have to deal with the constraints that would be required for a site-built structure, or the dimensions for the stairways and the egress and your minimum, widths of doorways and so forth. And so you're trying to get to the point of being able to have both the reduced standards but not have to fully comply with the RVIA, right? Because the RVIA, are they going to certify an owner-built building?
No.
Certify that?
No.
Yeah, I wouldn't think they would.
No, RVIA, in order to get certification, then you can build it yourself, but they certify the facility again.
Right.
So you have to go through, it's a 3-building process, so you have to build 3 structures. They go through the process of watching your construction methods all the way through those first 3 builds, seeing the level of consistency, the material consistency, all of that. Once you've completed that, then they certify your facility, and then you can build. It's an annual inspection after that. There are some places that are coming up now, which I think their intentions are good, but I think the way of going about it is wrong, where they're talking about how you can sign up with them and they'll certify your structure. Really, that would be like me saying, hey, I'm going to go down the street where you're building a brand new house and I'll certify it for you. Don't worry about the building department. Like that doesn't really work. Like you can say you're certifying it, but there's no real backing behind that. And again, I think the intention is good. It's not the right way to go about it. Gio?
So the city of Ojai, where Dan Fitzpatrick is helping us go through the zoning process for this, the ANSI standards is what he's proposing to meet as a backyard cottage second dwelling unit.
Mm-hmm.
So the certification process with ANSI would be from a third-party certification called PWA, and they require all this documentation from the electrical, plumbing, structural, a lot of documentation and photos, and they would come out there to also take a look at the unit to certify it. So from that third party, they would get certification, and that's what is being proposed right now in the city of Ojai.
Okay, so that gets you to the ANSI code, which once again leaves you with a recreational vehicle, which is great that Fresno, and I don't know if you know, Fresno has done this where they've allowed those as tiny house backyard cottages as ADUs, and so that's a great step, and I think it's an important step, and that's what we're on here, existing backyard cottage approvals. So it's nice to have a private inspection that will allow that to happen. That's good. My push. And again, I've already caught a ton of flack of this from the industry of tiny houses because some people don't want to go this way. But to me, if I'm calling it a house, I want to have it be a house. I want to have a certificate of occupancy. I want to have it approved through IRC. I want to make sure that I'm actually having a house and not just a recreational vehicle. That's important to me. So to get back to your question of do we want the cake, the frosting, but not have to pay for it? No, I don't think that. I think there are some that's true for. What I'm hoping to find are ways within the code, and we've seen this with the straw bale industry we were talking about earlier, where it took time, but we were able to make proposals to the ICC and get changes implemented into the 2015 code, so now there is a code for straw bale. So can we do something similar related to tiny houses that will allow us to make the changes that we need and the changes that keep it safe from your guys' perspective? Obviously there's going to be a compromise in there somewhere. It's not going to be we want everything and you guys are just going to have to give it to us. It doesn't work like that. Yeah.
I just heard that the International Code Council has a committee that's meeting on tiny houses.
Great.
You're not aware of that?
No. I talked to Marty Hammer, who was one of the spearheaders of the straw bale code, and I just missed the ICC code change proposal deadline of, January of 2016. And they're not looking at until 2019 now for proposals.
What's our ICC representative? Susan Dowdy. You should take her contact information and
I would love that. Yeah. I definitely. This is where my passion's at right now. I want to see this happen. So I definitely want to get involved. Thanks, I appreciate
The
that.
idea of moving a house from one side to another, the county, we've been doing house moving and permitting house moving since the 40s.
Yeah.
And we have a process in place where, depending on if the house to be moved is in the county or outside the county, we've been to Pasadena, done inspections on a house in Pasadena that they want to move up here. Do the inspection, we do an inspection, we write evaluation, they have to put up a bond in case they abandon it alongside the road,
Right.
wherever, in the process. And they put up a bond and then they move the house. Now that is different in that house has to be broken up into sections and pieces in order to be moved and requires a separate permit from the highway patrol, plus
Sure.
the cities in which they're going to be moving the house through. But these don't require a permit to be moved on
Right.
the state highway.
Right.
Right.
As long as they're meeting the maximum road width and heights, then
Right.
yeah, then they're fine.
Yeah,
If you go over to up to over 8'6", and you have to get a wide load permit, but yeah.
Yeah, right.
But other than that, no, they
But
don't
that-
require it.
In its transportable form, as long as you're less than 8'6", then you're fine.
Right.
And you can go all the way up to 400 square feet, I believe, and still be within those dimensions that are transportable on the highway without a permit. Just doesn't seem like a very far stretch to me to be able to move these from one jurisdiction to another, as long as the process is in place between the jurisdictions. You know, LA County, they recognize, yeah, this tiny house is leaving this site, it's gone from the rules, it's going to Ventura County, we issue a permit for it, goes in place, putting on foundation. How do you get it there? You know, maybe you need to haul it, or maybe you need to rent a trailer, put it on a trailer and haul it. You know, I don't know. It's just not, the idea of somebody coming into Ventura County and wanting to build a tiny home at 270 square feet, which I calculate is kind of the minimum floor area that you can have and still meet the non-efficiency dwelling unit dimensions. Nobody's come to apply. Nobody has come in and said, I want to build a type 5 conventionally constructed tiny home of 270 square feet. I got to hook it up to sewer, I know that. I got to have water. I got to, you know, nobody, you know.
It sure doesn't seem.
It's doable. It's completely doable. Somebody just has to come and apply for it.
Yeah.
Build it, put
And
it
we
on a
can't deny
slab.
the permit.
Build it, put it on a slab, put the trailer off to the side, and when you're ready, lift it up, put it on the trailer.
That's actually, I just talked to a guy about that at the last workshop, but he's been trying to figure out how he's going to build this place and move it. And I said, well, if you put it on girders that you can basically slide up onto the trailer, take it as a load on a trailer, and because he only wants to move it once. And then take it off that, you set it on piers, you got a pier foundation with girders, and you can do that to code in a way that's going to give you the IRC compliance. And his mind basically fell out of his head. It was amazing. And to see if that's an option. Okay, let's see. Oh yeah, so another thing as ADUs, one of the things that Dan Fitzpatrick talked about is that they're lower. As a tiny house on wheels, you're looking at 13'6", so you've got these sleeping lofts instead of a full second story, so you're reducing solar shading on neighboring properties and things like that, which is powerful to do. I don't think this really applies to you guys necessarily because you're not, I don't think, involved with the zoning side of things to dealing with like the cities need more affordable housing, but it is an instant solution to that, where it doesn't cost the city anything. Affordable housing is very expensive to build if you're dealing with apartment buildings or anything of that nature. Even co-housing is expensive to build, whereas a tiny house, you can actually have these tiny houses maybe built at the RVIA factory or built on site or whatever that is, but that's no cost to the city, and those can be instantly delivered and put on site and hooked up to sewer and hooked up to electric, and you've got affordable housing at no cost to the city. And there's reduced permanent impacts on the lots. So if someone decides as an ADU that they want to have that, and then they decide to sell their house down the road, and the person who moves in has no interest in having an ADU, they can just have it, they can sell it and it can be wheeled out and it's gone, and really the only thing left is a pad that was poured. And that can either be used for something else, for RV parking or just removed. This is again where I'm really looking at as a primary residence, trying to make that more realistic. Affordable, as I said, flexible. Flexible meaning that if need be, someone can move from one place to the other, not daily, but as needed. Low lot impact, again, as before, and extremely energy efficient, which we're all looking for with all of our codes. You guys out? You bet. Thank you, Jim. Appreciate it. And a great potential for infill construction. This is something we have in Southern Oregon, where we've got a lot of lots. It's an older, the city layout is older, so we've got a lot of flag lots and a lot of unusually shaped lots, so very small, narrow, or weird looking lots. Tiny houses are great for using on those places. And then this is the last bit on communities. I think, Sparky, you had said that you're not, maybe it was you who said that we're not going to get these in cities. Who said that? No, that was you. That was Mike. Yeah, we're not going to get these in, it's not going to be a 4,000 square foot house, a 4,000 square foot house, a 170 square foot house, a 4,000, like, it's not realistic. There's a rhythm to neighborhoods that we have to maintain. And I don't know too many tiny houses who would be actually really excited to live between 4,000 square foot houses. I think it would be kind of intimidating, to be honest with you. Yeah. Okay. I don't know Fillmore, but so recognizing that there is a rhythm there. If we're looking at building communities, it's about more than just the houses itself. It actually builds community, and that goes back to the whole concept of when I was talking about pride of ownership and having places where people can come together. They have like ideas, they're similar ideas, they have similar lifestyles that can come together. And multi-use neighborhoods, which I don't know how that works out in this region. I know in Southern Oregon that's something that we're working quite a bit on. So you can have housing and churches and shops and things all sort of multi-use in the same zoning. So that's a zoning issue, obviously, but it creates a lot more walking communities and people who actually know their neighbors and enjoy spending time with their neighbors, which I think all communities could use some help with. Ultimately, it's getting back to affordable housing, but with character. I mean, I grew up in New Jersey and driving into Manhattan, seeing the affordable housing they had set up, which was like these giant pillars of concrete that they just jammed people into, and it was always riddled with crime and anger and frustration. And that's not the kind of affordable housing that I think we want to create in today's world. So we're trying to find things that are a little bit more character-driven and something that's going to support building community and support people living healthy, safe, affordable lifestyles. So that's what I have for you guys. Thanks.